about first is we're here tonight to listen to you and to receive your feedback and your input on what we might consider adding or changing to the city charter. It's a time for us to listen. We won't ask a lot of questions. We're just here to listen to you, take input, make notes. We're going to do this twice. We're going to do this tonight and again in April, I think the April 16th or 15th. We'll do it twice and we'll gather that input. We're in listening mode tonight. We're not going to dialogue or debate or anything that you want to talk about. We just want to listen. And if there's a group of you that are united in what you would like us to change or hear from you, you're welcome to stand together in unison at the podium, have a spokesperson deliver those messages to us. That way, if you don't feel like speaking, you can have a spokesperson deliver that message for your group. So that's a possibility as well as we progress through the evening. We'll run through this. I would ask you to be courteous for your neighbors and your fellow citizens in your time. There's not a time limit, but I would ask you to be respectful of your time so others can speak and get their comments on the record for us to review. So with that, I believe we'll kick it off. Is there any particular order we're going to go in, or how does that work?
Mr. Chairman, you can just ask for the first person. I don't believe that there was a sign up, so we'll just allow the citizens to go on an honor basis. Okay, we got a starter right here. If you would, please state your name and your address here in Lubbock for the record, please.
Okay, am I on? Good?
You're on.
All right. My name is Adam Hernandez. I'm currently living in the 7400 block of Avenue X here in Lubbock. I'm also the communications chair on the board of Lubbock Compact. I'm pulling up my statement here. Okay. First and foremost, I'd like to remind this committee that it was created with the express purpose of gathering input from citizens about the very important issues that are under its purview. The fact that the agenda was released with no option for email and comments, as has been the common practice in these types of meetings, has been rightfully perceived by many as this committee operating in bad faith at the outset. If you'd like to change this perception, Mr. Arnold, as chairman, I suggest that you make sure that the option to email comments is restored to the agenda for the next public hearing, and that this committee takes every possible action it can to regain the trust of the general public in this process. Now, concerning the actual charter reform, we understand that there has been an idea floated by the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce about adding 2 at-large city council positions. There's no reasonable justification for this, and doing so would undermine the democracy of our local political processes. There's also the idea of changing the mayor's term length from 2 years to 4 years, which seems rather benign if taken by itself. However, in the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce's estimation, this has been combined with the at-large council member argument, with their position being that if the mayor's term length was extended to 4 years, that adding 2 at-large members would allow for a majority of the city council to be voted out every 2 years. Under the current system, the majority of the council is already up for election every 2 years. Also, Article 2 of the city charter allows for any city council member to be recalled at any time if citizens deem them unfit for office. So the chamber is creating an issue here where there isn't one. And their solution for this created problem is voter suppression. As history has shown, that's exactly what will happen if at-large members are added. I will also direct the committee to Jones versus the City of Lubbock, the lawsuit that created single-member districts and outlined term lengths very clearly, which you all were briefed on in the executive session last Wednesday. In order for these 2 things to be changed, the city would need to be prepared to challenge the rulings of Jones versus the City of Lubbock in U.S. District Court. And if that is the intention of the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce, the City of Lubbock, or anyone on this committee, know that this will not go unchallenged and that every possible action will be taken at every step to make sure it does not happen. We understand that 64% of the respondents to the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce survey on this topic were in support of this voter suppression tactic. But every single citizen and community leader we have spoken to, many here in the audience today, have been strongly opposed to it. Therefore, we are calling for this committee to commit that the mayor's term length will be kept at 2 years and that no at-large positions will be added in your recommendations to City Council. Next, we are calling for all City Council positions to be paid a living wage so that the citizens of Lubbock can have a larger, more diverse pool of potential candidates to choose from in future elections. The arguments against this idea don't hold up to the slightest scrutiny, which I'll explain now. A popular argument is that these positions are meant to be voluntary. Meant by whom is unclear because the charter doesn't state this position anywhere. The fact is that council members either need to be independently wealthy or retired to work what amounts to being a full-time position without full-time compensation. If we look at the current sitting council members, they all fit one of those descriptions. This has also been the case throughout Lubbock's history. What we have received as constituents as a result of this, more often than not, are council members who serve special interest groups and not the citizens as a whole. This is still true in 2021, with many council members afraid to get on the bad side of the developer community, for example, though they would not admit this publicly, of course. We've also heard the argument that a living wage could cause some people to run just for the money, which is ironically what often happens now, as some candidates at times receive healthy campaign contributions or other perks from special interest donors, hence them not wanting to get on these donors' bad sides. Besides that, the time to vet any candidate on their intentions is when they're running for office. If you think they're in it just for the pay, don't vote them in. Another argument is that the lack of a living wage does not stop someone from running for office. However, running for office is only part of the equation. Once in office, a person would still need income to finance their life. It is our opinion that being a city council member should not be a side gig, as they are overseeing critical policy decisions that many times have multi-million-dollar consequences and affect the real lives of their constituents. We have also heard the argument that the council isn't meant to spend that much time in the role, but we can clearly see that what is meant and what happens in reality are often at odds. Whether it's intended or not, the council members who are being honest will tell you that it is indeed a full-time job. We've even heard from one council member that they only set policy and the city manager handles day-to-day operations of the city. This is true, but it is concerning that the duty of setting policy is viewed by this council person as being of little consequence. As stated previously, policy can have multi-million-dollar consequences and affects the real lives of human beings. Taking this task lightly is certainly not in the best interests of the citizens as a whole. The people of the city deserve council members who can commit their full time and attention to such important matters, not members who view their duty as only setting policy. We understand that the respondents to the Lubbock Chamber of Commerce survey were mostly in support of not raising city council pay, which makes sense considering many of those respondents would be independently wealthy business owners who are likely out of touch with the reality that the majority of citizens live in. In contrast, Lubbock Compact launched a poll in November of last year, which had citizen responses from all 6 districts, and 65% were in support of a living wage of at least $60,000 per year for city council positions. Ironically, the same folks who aren't in support of a living wage for city officials are silent on the fact that county officials are paid very well. County commissioners, for instance, make $100,000 per year for, depending on who you talk to, the same amount of work or less. It is our position that serving the city council should no longer be a privilege afforded only to independently wealthy or retired individuals. The average working class citizen should have the possibility to see more representation on the council who understands their experiences than we have seen before now. Our final position is that the outdated petition process should be modernized to allow for citizens to more easily present ordinances for the council's consideration and to protect taxpayers from the burden of unnecessary legal fees that can arise from illegal ordinances being passed by citizen vote. A recent example would be the Sanctuary City for the Unborn ordinance that, if passed on May 1st ballot, will almost certainly be challenged legally and will ultimately be invalid anyway due to federal law superseding it, regardless of how strongly anyone may feel about it. To ensure this type of waste of taxpayer dollars doesn't happen in the future, any citizen ordinance that is voted down by the city council should be vetted for legality by the city attorney before it is eligible to be placed on a ballot for citizen vote. Also, the required number of signatures should be 4% of the total registered voters of Lubbock instead of 25% of the number of voters in the previous municipal election cycle. Based on the current numbers, a citizen petition today would require more than 19,000 signatures due to the presidential election cycle being combined with the municipal election last year, which is practically impossible to accomplish in the 60 days allowed to collect them. Tying this to the number of registered voters would cause this to fluctuate much less dramatically year to year, regardless of any special circumstances such as the COVID pandemic. Signatures should also be able to be collected digitally to bring this process into the 21st century. And that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and your address, please.
These are my children, my husband, and my family. Hi, my name is Rosa Saiz, and I'm sorry if I don't speak as well as you do. The reason I'm here, sirs and ma'ams, is because I live in the Spanish Oak apartments, the ones that y'all fail to condemn, that we continue to live in unlivable situations and conditions. I am a tenant there, therefore I live there and live in the filth that we have to live in, which is sewer water that my children run through, which is mold in my walls, which is leaks that never get repaired, which is damages that never get repaired. I don't know if they gave y'all the pictures that I sent in, but I've been sending the city all kinds of pictures. These are all the police reports. I have, in less than 6 months for you, all assault on my family, broken windows, home evasions. This is happening to my family because we are the ones that stood up to fight against Mr. Lester Payne and the living conditions that we are currently living in. I was threatened because I came to you today. Not only have I been assaulted with brass knuckles in my ribs and my husband with bottles on the side of his face, and my daughters having to watch us and call 911 for themselves. 2 illegal 3-day evictions that they give me to threaten me just not to show up today to see you and tell you that the living conditions that this man has us living under. I applied for the Texas rent relief. This man received the money. He fired his management because of her stealing our money. So now he tells me I've got a proof that I paid my rent. Well, she took it. She embezzled our money. Mr. Lester Payne hired new management that we've had in just 2 weeks.
Ms. Saez, let me interrupt you. This is a public hearing for the Charter Review Committee. That's an issue you probably need to take up with City Council. This is not the body that, we have no authority over any living conditions in the city of Lubbock. I'm sorry your plight and your situation, but this isn't the body to really approach.
We don't know who to approach anymore. We've already called police, our schools, CPS. We've sent pictures to your city code ordinance people. Who do we talk to next?
Ma'am, we can get you with someone here, and you can talk to them and probably take it to a better avenue, so that they would be able to hear what your issues are.
Thank you, because I don't want anything else to happen to my family or something worse to happen to us before we get hurt.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Beck, 5632 Duke Street. I am a professor of Bible and missions at Lubbock Christian University, a missions minister at the Monterey Church of Christ, and a 36-year missionary in Kenya, East Africa. Thank you for making it possible for the public of Lubbock to make comments. It is incredibly important to hear a diversity of voices rather than just a few select voices in making decisions. as weighty as the recommendations that you will be considering. It seems a bit rushed, we admit, and with less than a week to try to organize, and yet, nonetheless, I thank you for the opportunity to speak. I wish to make two comments on two items, one being the pay for mayor and council, which I am in favor of, and the other, the consideration of two at-large members, which I have grave concerns about. First, Lubbock has many talented, concerned, and insightful young leaders of many diverse backgrounds. At the $75-$25 monthly scale that we presently follow, the field of possible candidates is limited, as Adam has said, and many others, to independently wealthy, retired, or perhaps some people who may have unknown money behind them. A pay scale of a living wage would create the possibility of a much more equitable, fair, and representative reflection of Lubbock on our city council. For the same reason of just and equitable representation on our council, I have significant concerns about adding two at-large members. Allow me to remind us, or perhaps inform some of the history of our sometimes unfair city. In the Avalanche Journal article dated October 28, 1909, the editor writes with concern of Negroes who have been driven from San Angelo that might be coming to Lubbock. Please excuse the language I will use as I look honestly at that past. The editor of that article goes on and says, Negroes would be coming to town on the noon train. If one or two come, others will follow, because Negroes are like Johnson grass when it comes to taking root and increasing in town. The editor goes on to speak with incredible ignorance as he speaks of the kinky head coons, saying, the Lord made them for no reason but to be servants to mankind. One serious mistake has been made, he goes on, in trying to educate them. They are by nature, he says, unfit for knowledge, beyond that necessary to make common laborers of them for commerce. These are some of our earliest roots. In 1910, the first African American moved to Lubbock. In the 1916 census, there were 16 African Americans living in Lubbock. In 1917, the at-large electoral system was adopted by what was later revealed to be a council full of KKK members. In 1923 was the redlining of East Lubbock, with equally disturbing wording in it. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to refresh your memory. Something of interest concerning this are the living conditions in West Lubbock received electricity in 1916. East Lubbock received electricity in 1930, the late 1930s. After a petition was filed in 1943, water lines were finally run to East Lubbock in 1945. In 1976, A. Gene Gaines, the first black lawyer to practice in Lubbock, set out to challenge the 1917 at-large system of Lubbock. After an 8-year battle with the city, Gene Gaines won the suit in the U.S. District Court, and the city was organized by law into 6 single-member districts, as we have now, as it was deemed unconstitutional and unrepresentative and unfair to the majority of Lubbock. in the minority of Lubbock. In 1984, 37 years ago, in 1984, Lubbock elected their first Hispanic American and African American when they elected Maggie Trejo and TJ Patterson as the two first ethnic minorities to ever serve on the city council. The effort to add 2 at-large members, for whatever reason, would do nothing to increase the equity and equal representation of all of Lubbock, of all ethnicities. As the council is now, we continue to edge closer to truly equal and diverse representation in Lubbock. 2 at-large members would most likely make the council even more imbalanced and take us back to pre-1984 situations. Perhaps that is the intent of this recommendation, but I certainly hope not. I would think that that would be an incredibly dark blot on the history of our Chamber of Commerce as well as our city council. We have a great city. Don't take it backwards. Lead it into a more just, equitable, and kind world. I am in favor of a sufficient salary for council members and the mayor, and I am not in favor. In fact, I am incredibly concerned about the 2 additions of at-large members of the council. May God give us ears to hear. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Beck. And congratulations on your national championship in women's basketball. Okay, who's next? Who wants to follow Mr. Beck?
My name is Godfrey Christoph, and I reside at 6207 Raleigh Drive. Thank you, Mr. Arnold, and all the distinguished board members. I'm honored to stand before you and to speak in regards to the dilution of the voting process, and I stand against the at-large position. But I want to appeal to you guys from a historical perspective, you know, because I've always been into history, you know, and I just want to go back and let you guys know that what you already know, and I don't have to remind you of this, but sometimes we need to be reminded, because I always want to ask the question, how did we get here? You know, once we answer that question is, where do we go from now? You know, so I'm gonna start out telling you guys, how did we get here? And I hope to be brief. I'm not gonna hold you too long, but I'm gonna speak truthfully and honestly and humbly before you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Now, we know that in 1619, the first Africans came to this country as slaves in Jamestown, Virginia. And we know that all the way up from 1619, you know, slavery began to spread throughout the colonies. You know, I mean, just men who were not considered men. They were considered commodity, you know, cattle, you know, something like that. You know, but this nation continued to move forward. And we came to the 1800s, you know, 1800s, 1830, that was a crucial time, you know, because slavery was being fought against by abolitionists and people standing up for freedom, to be free, to believe the idea of Thomas Jefferson, all men are created equal, you know? But we know that all men didn't mean black men or brown men, you know, it was just white men. You know, that's the truth and that's the reality of it all. And then we came up to the 1830s, all the way up to the Civil War. You know, manifest destiny. You know, the whole continent, the North American continent was the idea for white supremacy. You know, we know what happened in Cuba, you know, all these other nations on the islands, you know, or how our government wanted to run that whole North American continent for white supremacy. And as we began to move southward, then we began to move southwestward, all began with the idea of making the whole continent for white supremacy. And people stood up and they fought that idea. People died, you know. I mean, and we just kept pushing through, you know, all the way up until the Civil War, you know, where freedom came, you know. I mean, man, it was like a cloud by day and a fire by night. And we worked through. And y'all know the time that we're living in now. You know, people are still trying to suppress the power of minorities, you know. And we, as a community, said we want to be a part of the democratic process. We want to join you in Lubbock because Lubbock has so much potential, so many possibilities to be a great city. But it can't be just one group. It got to be all of us because that's what we put up on our money. That's what we say, e pluribus unum. That's an American idea. Out of many, one. That's all we are appealing for, is to be one nation, one government, one city. You know, so we ask you to allow us to join you in this. We want to be a part of it. We don't want to do injustices or any wrongdoing. Man, we want to be honorable, righteous Americans, you know, who believe in the idea of America. All we want you to do is just let us be a part of it. So that's why I stand here now, you know, saying no. Don't do the at-large position because it's going to dilute our voting power, our strength to become a part of for all of us. So I say, you know, with all humility, just let us unite.
Thank you, Mr. Kristoff. Okay. Who's next? If you would state your name and your address in Lubbock, please.
I'm Matthew Cavazos. I'm living on 1746th Street. I'm up here to voice my support for Adam Hernandez and the Lubbock Compact Group. The at-large amendment seems very convenient and very unnecessary. It looks like it seems like electoral shenanigans designed to benefit the property owning class, and it is unconscionable. I also support the living wage for council members. The current system ensures that representation remains with the property owning class. I also find this unconscionable as well. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Blassos. Thank you for your comments. I'm checking to see if anybody on Zoom has raised their hand, so just give me just a second. I think we're good. Yes, ma'am.
How y'all doing today?
Good, ma'am. Good evening.
I
Give us your name and your address real quick.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm April Frank, and I live on 2702 East 7th Street in Lubbock, Texas, which is on the east side. Smack dead on the east side. Matter of fact, on one of the busiest streets on Zenith in 7th. I've been living there off and on all my life, but I'm currently a homeowner as of 2017 at that home. And I just want to take the time to say that even though I'm not a true Lubbock, Texas resident, because I'm originally from Austin, Texas. But since I've been here, I have noticed many drive-bys shootings. I've noticed my gas meter has been shot out. I've seen police pursuits up and down the streets. Now, this is not just once a month. This is like every other week. Okay. Now, I know this don't have anything to do with what y'all are trying to do, but my thing is, if you're trying to get someone in office here for Lubbock to speak for Lubbock, whoever it is, black, white, or purple, because I've seen my own black people done me bad here than any other race. And that's just being honest. So I'm not gonna give the whole speech of race because y'all know about race as much as I do. We've seen it on the news here recently. We've also felt it here in the county. So I'm not gonna sit here and talk about race. My thing is, whoever you get in office, I hope that they do take in consideration of race and problems here in Lubbock County, and who are going to help not only the south, north, or west side of Lubbock, but also the east side, who really needs it. I also have past history with Lubbock as I was a student and I was a former teacher, Head Start teacher for LISD. My children went to Estacado, but I took them out when we had racial issues and could not find anyone to help us with those issues. So they went to Triumph Public School here in Lubbock that just came about, which is a great school. And I'm glad that Lubbock has that for people as another option besides LISD, because LISD has a bunch of problems. But like I said, I'm not here to discuss all those other problems, but my thing is, the bottom line is y'all trying to put someone in office. All I'm saying is, whoever y'all put in office, make sure they really do their history and make sure that they address the racial issues here in Lubbock County. And they're going to be for not just certain sides of Lubbock, but all sides of Lubbock. That's all I'm saying. And for businesses to grow on the East Lubbock, because I'm also a small business owner, self-employed. And that will be great for someone to come in here and actually bring something to the East Side that we can benefit besides a Pizza Hut, a car wash, or something like that. Because it's more of us on the East Side who care than what y'all think. Yes, there are a lot of those who don't care, who you can see hang out in front of the stores, hang out in front of the car washes, but there's more to the East Side than those. We have those like me, these people out here who are here, who care, who probably live on the East Side of Lubbock. And so whoever y'all get and put in office, they need to know that it's more than just a black and white thing. Okay? And that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. We do have a Zoom caller that has raised their hand. So David Puga, is that how you say that? Okay. Ms. Garza?
No, just a second, sorry. David Puga. Mhm.
Okay.
We're going to try to get him on there. I don't know if he's by phone or Zoom. We'll try to get him up there.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Puga, you should be able to speak if you're unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We sure can. Go ahead.
All right.
And address.
I'm David L. Puga, and I live on the 5700 block of 2nd Street. It was a surprise to find out that at-large positions were being floated around, and on a survey that seemed directed specifically at people who the chamber felt was sympathetic to this agenda. In fact, a quote from the vice president of the government relations for the chamber insinuated that this would be beneficial to the citizens of Lubbock. But the question remains, which citizens? At large in Lubbock was struck down on the ground that it violated the Voting Rights Act. It was found that it unfairly targeted minority communities who are already underrepresented. Like many have already pointed out, we didn't have a single minority representative until this practice was abolished. To even consider bringing back such a suppressive practice that has historically been used to silence and minimize minority voices is disenfranchisement, plain and simple, and should never be considered. For this reason, I'm also against extending the mayoral term, as this would allow for that to be implemented. And as for a living wage, right now the council positions are almost exclusively a vanity position for those who are independently wealthy or retired. Because there's no living wage allotted, many people who would do wonders are dissuaded from running. So I'm for a living wage for council members on par with other governmental jobs in the city. I want to voice my opposition for the sanctuary city of the unborn, in that it should never have been able to make it to ballot. And that our ability to petition can be used to push unconstitutional and illegal ballot measures is also mind-boggling. We need to update our city charter so this type of thing doesn't happen, lest we get a measure one day to ban Black and brown people from sharing fountains and being barred from restaurants because of their melanin content. We have a chance to move Lubbock into the future, and we need to ensure equity and justice for every citizen. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Puga. Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address here in Lubbock, please.
My name is Joe Knatzer, and I live in the 1900 block of 33rd Street. Am I close enough to the mic?
Yes, ma'am, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be brief. There have been people far more eloquent than I am who have stated their opinions. But I think it's important for every citizen to stand up and say what they believe is important for our city. I was born here. I've lived here all my life. I'm 74 years old. I went to Lubbock High School. I graduated from Texas Tech. I have roots here. My child is here. My grandchildren, other members of my family are here. I am really interested and invested in the direction that Lubbock chooses to take. The survey that was released by the Chamber of Commerce stating that the majority of people who responded were in favor of 2 at-large positions being added to the city council was very strange to me. Number one, we don't know the ethnicity or the gender of the people who responded. And I think that's very important information to know. Number two, the respondents were absolutely limited to people who are members of the Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, that sample is incredibly small and not sufficient for anyone to be able to extrapolate that information to the city at large. The people who live here understand that everyone in the city needs to be represented. They understand that they no longer will accept the kind of racism that has occurred in the past. That's very important for me personally and my husband, that we go forward and we are more inclusive and that we are here for all of the citizens in Lubbock, not just a very few respondents to a Chamber of Commerce survey. My other point is I'm very much in favor of the salaries for the city council persons. I know for a fact that my city council person works way more than a part-time volunteer position. It's not fair. It's not fair to the many other people in Lubbock who might be really wonderful representatives, but they can't afford to run because they have to work full-time to support their families. The obvious answer would be to pay the most important people who serve us on the city council a living wage. I'm very much in favor of that reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knatzer. Thank you. Yes, sir. Please tell us your name and your address, please.
My name is Samuel Gonzalez. Everybody calls me Sam here in West Texas. I knew of this meeting here about in the last week. Mr. Gomez called me and informed me of it. But the main reason I'm here is I was born and raised down I was born in Harlingen, Texas, which is about the tip of Texas. So, you know, there's a lot of Hispanics and totally different. When I was about 6 years old, my family migrated to West Texas, different towns, eventually landed in Idalou. And of course, I've been here in the Lubbock area probably since 1980. I've moved away a few times, but I've always had my homestead here, even though I had other residents in other places throughout the state. Currently, I'm the president for the local LULAC chapter, one of them, which we're trying to expand into a larger group. And if you don't know, LULAC stands for the League of United Latin American Citizens. And I stress that when I have a meeting and I'm talking to the group, I stress that word united. I think it's very important to all of us in this community, in this county, everywhere for that matter. You know, and part of LULAC was formed, an American GI Forum, for the purpose of equal rights, equal representation, especially when a lot of the men went off to war and came back and were denied burial in certain cemeteries because they were not of the right color. And I grew up, I'm 68 years old, so I got to see quite a bit of racial tensions, discussions. And when I was a little boy, 5, 6 years old, and I'd go to certain places, and I wasn't allowed to attend, participate certain things, because you're not the right color. And I'd look at me like, man, what color do I need to be, you know? But long story short, I guess that's why I'm here tonight. Oh, and I didn't tell you my address. I live in District 1, 1700 block of 32nd Street. And, but I remember in the early 80s, like I said, I was made aware of this meeting within the last 7 days. But I know in the early 80s, I'm not exact on the day, but LULAC, an American GI Forum, had a lawsuit against the city of Lubbock, and that's when the at-large election was dissolved or put on the shelf. And now I'm hearing that, of course, there's been a lot of growth here in the city, and because of the same reason, my understanding is, I don't really know the whole story to this. My understanding is that there's 2 more council people possibly added to the group, and this would be voting at large. Well, going back to what I just stated, in the early 80s, before they did away with the at large, it was very difficult for a minority, I don't care what color you were, to obtain, or even if they, well, number one, to obtain a seat. And many times if they did obtain a seat, they got outvoted or whatever the case may be. Well, I think this would not be a good thing to have in that large voting concept again, number one. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it's a good thing. We've already come across that in history. We don't want to repeat history, and we want to go forward. And the other thing is, they're talking about city council individuals being hired, put on a paid staff position. And I think that's an excellent idea because, again, I've heard a few people talking about there are many qualified people that could do that. But because of taking care of their household, families, or whatever the case may be, they are not able to do that unless you're a self-employed or just rich person. So I think that would be a great idea to have a paid city council individual, people, man, woman. So those are the two things that how I feel, and I know LULAC would feel that way, and some of the things we fought in the past, and we don't want to go backwards. I've seen some things go backwards, but those are things that we're already here. Let's stay here. Let's be positive. Let's be united, and let's go forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Yes, sir. Please state your name and your local address, please.
Hi there, my name is Nicholas Moniz and I live at 121 North Avenue L in the Guadalupe area. Good to see some of y'all. I recognize several faces on here and y'all are probably gonna get tired of me at some point. Just really quickly, I wanted to voice my support in making sure that there are livable wages for city council. There are 5, actually really quickly. Does the advisory committee go from Jim Gomez to Bill Howerton and Amy Sims, or just from Jim Gomez to Jeff Wansel? Okay. Interesting. Okay, the reason I bring that up is because as you've already heard, there's a lot of support in the importance of equity, right? I think a lot of the conversation that keeps coming around is not necessarily for equality. We need to take a look at the word equity, right? History has shown that we as a community, specifically in Black and Brown, historically here in Lubbock, our histories are not perpendicular, they're parallel, right? And the city has historically told us, hey, here's these resources and you'll have to fight amongst each other. That is not necessarily the case in 2021. And I think what you guys are seeing is a lot of support within this community that is saying, hey, we don't need a seat at your table, we need our own table, okay? That being said, I think that I am in full support and I would like to back this organization. Again, I myself only recently found out about this advisory committee probably within the last 2 days, so interesting. A livable wage would make people like myself want to run for city council. I put a ballot in a couple of years ago, obviously found out how much I was going to get paid and pulled that ballot out really quickly. And there is a lot of people in my age group who would love to be a part of the democratic process, but if there's not an attainable way to do so, why should we stick around? I hear a lot from the civic government, I hear a lot from Texas Tech University about how we want to hold on to our millennials. Well, what are y'all creating within that process to make sure that we stay? The closest area to us in the West Texas area is El Paso, and they too also have 5 people on their city council, if I'm not mistaken, and they pay them a livable wage of $50,000 a year. How does it that our city council gets $4,200 or $4,700 a year, and they do just as much work as an actual 9-to-5 job? By paying them livable wages, what you're doing is you're holding them accountable for their actions. I hear a lot of the different people that I have talked to in this room, and I'm sure amongst themselves and the different people that they are around that, well, we'll let so-and-so win, or we'll let so-and-so run, or we'll let so-and-so run. Well, the reason we don't have as many viable options is because people don't want to run for a position that's only paid $4,000 a year. And I know by my own standards, I'm tired of seeing the same people run over and over and over again because that gets old. That's beating a dead horse. I think at large positions, again, as they have already stated, that defeats the process of what your actual community looks like. If you look at the Texas Education Agency and the amount of students that are of color, 77% of those are Spanish speaking. And that number is only going to increase, especially if we're looking at the communities coming from Honduras and the rest of Central America. We are in a part of the area in Texas that people want to live here and build here and have an opportunity to do so. So our seat at the table has to look like the rest of the table. So yeah, that is all I have to say. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Moniz. I think we had someone raise their hand, but they lowered it. So I think we're still free and clear on Zoom. Anyone else in the auditorium like to come speak? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
My name is Tyler Hardy. I live on a 2200 block of 28th Street. So I, like many other people, have said, just found out about this, and the fact that we're even discussing in a modern day and age of a representative democracy, having a group of 6 individuals, and I'm not by any means an expert on local government or regional operations or how even all the bureaucratic process works just to get the most basic things done. But I think like everybody here understands basic math. And if you add 2 individuals for a city council who doesn't get paid and a mayor doesn't get paid, and then the mayor wants to extend his term to 4 years, what it seems like is a chamber of commerce and a group of business individuals at a time which is unprecedented financial calamity all across the world, is basically just saying, we want to be set up for the next 4 years. We want to ensure that our interests are represented. And I guarantee you that I walked here and fed people down at Salvation Army before I came here. Their votes are the ones that are going to be diluted. The east side is going to be diluted. The north side is going to be diluted. And especially if you don't pay individuals, the only way that people are able to execute the functions of city council will be if they're financially secure. And the districts, which would be diluted, not represented anyways, on top of not being able to have a paid position for you're able to, run for a position that could help your neighbor out or run for a position that could help your community out. It should be obvious. I mean, the math is so basic. And what it seems like is a group of business owners are getting together with a group of powerful people in collusion with individuals on the city council. And what they're doing is trying to extend their financial security on top of disenfranchising the city of Lubbock by adding 2 and making it a group of 8. In the city of the size of Lubbock, there are so many individuals that, I don't even need to do the math. I was thinking about doing it on my calculator, but I didn't want to interrupt all the people who have powerful words to say. And the lady that was here, right, that had nowhere else to go. She had nowhere else to go. She came here in front of you. That's the sort of representation that's diluted. That's the representation that gets diluted by 2 whenever you add seats. And it's just so obvious. It's just so obvious what's happening. And I urge you to consider everybody that lives inside the city of Lubbock, not just paying members to the Chamber of Commerce, which I don't even know how the Chamber of Commerce works, but if there's fees associated, it should be obvious. They're able to pay individuals to be here today, but the ones that are disenfranchised are the ones that have to come after work. And the people that we fed down there today, they're not going to be the ones that have a stronger voice. It's going to be reduced by a multiple of 2 to the 8. And so it's infuriating that we all sit here and pretend like what's happening is not happening. And I urge you not to do the wrong thing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Sarah Mclardy, and I live at 2125 65th Street. So, Ms. Spencer, I'm in your district. I've lived in the place at 2125 65th since 1970. So I'm a long-termer, and I was also here since I was in the 2nd grade. And I'll let you guess how long ago that was. So I'm very much opposed to the idea of having these at-large additions to the city council. I can't think of what reason you might have for that. It seems unwieldy. since I've been in my part of town, 2125 65th Street, District 2 has had its boundaries drawn farther and farther west as the population moves west, because I think the city is obliged to keep its districts equal in population. I believe that's correct. So that's why you draw the lines newly. So all the time we have better and better representation. I think it's fine just the way it is. I think we have a multicultural city. I hope to advance the way we're already headed. So please don't mess it up.
Thank you, Ms. Mclardy. Milton has raised his hand. That's all I know is his name is Milton. So is he going to be on the audio, or how are we going to do this? Okay. Milton, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr. Arnold and the panel. Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. State your address, please, for the record.
Okay, my name is Milton Lee. I live at 918 East Tulane Street here in Lubbock. I've been living here for 67 years. I'm 72 years old. I have my family is here, and I'm retired from the Postal Service, and I'm also retired from the military, the Army. I have seen Lubbock grow, and over the years that I've been here. And when we came up with the fact of having single districts, I thought that was one of the greatest things that could have happened to Lubbock, because it brought diversity to the council. And I think if we start leaning backwards, that would not create a good atmosphere for the city of Lubbock. I'm also president of the Lubbock NAACP. And that in that group, I mainly look at records and I look at law and things of this nature. And we had to go through a lot to get single district. The 15th Amendment and Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 played a valuable role in where we are today. And I just don't want to see us having to go back. And I just want to read a little bit from that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time with you, and I appreciate y'all giving us an opportunity to speak today. But it says in Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 prohibits voting practices or procedures that discriminate on the basis of race, color, or membership in one of the language minority groups identified in this Section 4 of the Act. Most of the cases arise under Section 2 since its enactment involves challenges to at-large election schemes. And that's what I want to talk about. We don't need any more at-large districts. I'm in favor of having salaries for our council and our mayor. I think that it's needed. I think we can get qualified people to run for these positions, and we could get the best of the best elected to do the best that they can do for this city. I appreciate the ones who have already been the council and the mayor for the city in the past, and I hope that they continue to do the best that they can do for Lubbock. Lubbock is growing, and we need everyone to have a part at the table. And so I am encouraging you to think about all of these things when you are making these decisions and bringing it to the council and to the mayor, because we just don't want to go backwards. I remember how Lubbock was. I am proud of what Lubbock is now, and I think Lubbock can go further in the future for the best reasons. So I thank you, Mr. Arnold, and all the panel for giving me this opportunity to say these words.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Okay, nobody's on Zoom. So,
Good evening, committee. My name is J. Leon Williams Jr., and I'm a resident at 5211 43rd Street in Lubbock, Texas. I'm originally from Washington, D.C., but I've been in Lubbock for 40 years, so Lubbock's home now. I am concerned about the charter reform from the standpoint of the at-large proposition. In my mind, it's why do we need that? Why do we need to add 2 at-large members? I haven't heard any reason for that. And then when you look into the history, which I'm not going to try and review because it's already been eloquently stated already, that prohibited the Latin community and the African-American community from having any representation. So now why all of a sudden are we trying to add 2 at-large seats to the city council? From my activism in the community, I see it as pure power play. I worked pretty hard with the West Texas organizing strategy at one point to get a payday lending ordinance passed, and we weren't successful. It was shot down. We had some momentum at one point. We had 2 votes for sure, and we looked like we had other votes coming from other districts. My sense is that going forward, if we add 2 at-large members, that will certainly dilute any of the concerns coming out of districts 1 and 2. And we know that the demographics of Lubbock are changing, especially in the central part of Lubbock. I think District 3 is changing. So it looks pretty good that we'll have 3 votes potentially that would be concerned with issues coming out of our African-American and Latin communities in particular. That demographic change is shifting over into districts 4, I think, and 5. I live in District 5. So again, I'm against the at-large, adding 2 at-large seats to the city council. The other issue that I want to speak to is paying our city council representatives. Coming from Washington, D.C., I'm used to that already. And I saw something, I think, in print where Laredo is already doing that and is working out well for them. And so Lubbock and Laredo, I think, are about the same size. So we could pull that off here easily. I think for sure that would enlarge the pool of applicants or people seeking public service on the city council, and that would be a good thing. So I'm in favor of that for sure. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, thank you for your comments and welcome to Lubbock. Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Joshua Shankles, and I live in the 2600 block of 47th Street. I'm a constituent of District 2, and these people here are my neighbors and friends. Before I go into my prepared remarks, I just want to make note of the people are demanding good governance out of this process. That's what they want to see as the result of this, obviously. Good governance, efficient access to their representatives, and representation that is responsive to their interests. And that's already a challenge. And if we take some of the recommendations before this council, it'll become even harder. I think it's going to become necessary, and I'm sorry for the discomfort this might cause, to point out and push back hard against the Chamber of Commerce's advocacy on these issues and their positions, because they have an outsized measure of influence in this city. And so I think it's absolutely essential that the manipulation that they perform be pointed out as a matter of the public record. So First, it's probably obvious that as a business advocacy organization, it stands to reason that some profit for themselves or their members are to be made from this endeavor, and that's why they're taking a position at all on any matter before this. And indeed, these right here are pages of the city council's campaign finance contribution disclosures. Their donors include members of this committee, and their donors include prominent members of the Chamber of Commerce. And if I'm not mistaken, all 7 of you here are yourselves members of the Chamber of Commerce, or have businesses that are members of the Chamber of Commerce, or have close connections to the Chamber of Commerce.
Absolutely not.
I could be entirely mistaken about that matter, but this is what's pullable from the public record. So when my friends and neighbors here are asking why is it that the chamber is even engaging in these matters before this committee on the governance of our city, not just a plain Jane business matter, then it stands to reason that the opposing positions that have been forwarded would be highly disruptive to their system of political patronage, which they have set up in this city. Farther, it would be safe to assume that the chamber sees it in their interest that the governing class of our city should be the upper class only, as they seem fairly opposed to fairly paying someone to represent their interests and the interests of their constituents, as would be necessary for all those, for all but those who already have the means to do so. It would further explain why they would bring up at-large members at all, because literally nobody was talking about this issue until the chamber brought it up. The threadbare and nonsensical defense given by the chamber's president of government relations barely stands to reason. They say they want to change the representation more frequently. Then 2 years, how it already stands? It's absurd. No, this is a thinly veiled attempt to diminish the power of their opposition and potentially to purchase and aggrandize more influence to themselves, as it has obviously been heretofore working quite well. You know, they're going to offer the results of their survey as a demonstration. This is going over some old treads as the will of the people, but 500 members of a special interest group answering a survey designed to give them the responses that they want to offer up as evidence that this is the actions that this committee should take is hardly a representation of the people. If the chamber was truly concerned with improving the quality of our representation, they would support paying a living wage, as that would indeed allow more people than the those with means to be added to the pool of potential representatives that could be before this body. And, you know, with all due respect, it deserves to be pointed out that this isn't some kind of meritocracy that we're talking about here, how this has all come to happen. This is just garden variety corruption. It is. It's plain and simple. There's no other, you know, the position that the chamber would take on term limits is equally absurd. They want a mechanism by which to bounce out representatives that the people are perfectly happy with. We already have term limits. They are called elections. So I can't allow the chamber to have an outsized influence on this matter. And I really don't think my friends and neighbors are either going to stand for that remaining the case in this process. I do thank the committee for the time to bring this to your attention, and I look forward to seeing what the results of this process will be.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Mr. Schenkel. As a point of clarification, just to remind everyone, there's nothing under consideration by this committee at the moment. So I appreciate everybody's feedback. We've received the chamber survey, we received Compact Lubbock survey at the same time. So we're here to listen to you. There's no opinions on this committee right now. We're forming those as we hear from our citizens. And so I appreciate your comments.
I do need to add, though, that as far as being a member of the chamber, I may be my company, but it's not me.
Good evening. State your name and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Nicholas Berkfeld, and I recently moved to the Tech Terrace neighborhood. I'm on the, 2325 23rd Street. Members of the Charter Review Committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with y'all today at this public hearing. I first have to acknowledge that there are living legends in this audience today. Both Rose Wilson as well as LULAC, who both fought the cases in the 70s and in 83 to make sure that at-large positions were gotten rid of in the city of Lubbock. And I think it says something that those individuals needed less than 3 days' time and notice to be able to turn out today. And one individual mentioned, what does the will of the people look like? And I think today, this is the will of the people here. Not in surveys that are submitted and individuals that can't stand up here and present their positions confidently, knowing the way in which that they would be interpreted by the rest of us. And so for those who spoke here today, I stand in solidarity with them, because what they are talking about ultimately is love and justice. That we can't go back as a community, that we have to find a way to bring unity to this city and find a way to truly define what one Lubbock is. And that one Lubbock involves all of us in terms of representation and governance, which is why the Lubbock Compact is advocating for a living wage. It's all of us when it comes to participating in the democratic process, which is why they advocate for reforms to citizen petitions. And most importantly, it's about making sure that representation of all communities in the city of Lubbock is equal. And that is why we fight against at-large council member positions. It hurts me to think that Rose Wilson is here today. After all of the fighting that had to happen, I heard her speak on this topic several weeks ago in a Truth and Reconciliation meeting, and I cried from the efforts and the work and the years of hard conversations that were necessary to get us to the point of having the district system that we do today. It is hard for me to understand, how can you justify adding 2 council positions to a community that already has 6? When you think about how many individuals a Lubbock council member represents, it's about 43,000 people. That's about half of what a Dallas council member can represent. Are our council half as good as Dallas council members? In Amarillo, a city about our size, a little bit smaller, they have districts that are only 4. So are we saying that somehow we need double the size of government than the city of Amarillo does to make sure that we're able to function effectively? How do these arguments on the face of them make any sense? And it hurts me to see the fact that we've had to have so many community members come out today to speak on this topic that should have been buried. As a Lubbock citizen and somebody who was raised here, elementary school through high school, Texas Tech for undergrad, even for me, I felt a mark of shame when I read the Avalanche Journal article from last month, speaking that the original charter review committee for the city, when we wrote our initial constitution, were outed as members of the Ku Klux Klan. We have an infamous history as a city. There is no reason why we should be bringing that up. There is no reason why we should look to that past for answers for tomorrow. Because right now, what we're asking is to say, for once and for all, for this committee to say that the Klan got it wrong, that this city can move on from that period in time, that we don't have to think about voter suppression in this toxic political climate that we find ourselves in today, that our city can move on from these conversations and think about a brighter future together. Let's modernize this charter, find ways to bring more input and citizen engagement into the city of Lubbock, and leave the past where it should be, behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burkfeld. We have Foy Mills has raised their hand, so let's see if we can hear from Foy Mills.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity to visit with this distinguished panel. My name is Foy Mills. I live at 8704 Salisbury Avenue. I've had the privilege since my return to Lubbock in 2018 to participate on the Community Engagement Task Force, as well as having participated in the recent Joyce James training, which was granted through a grant to the city of Lubbock. Through that process, I've listened to my fellow citizens from across the spectrum in this community, and have tried to listen intensely to their concerns, both white, black, and brown. I've had opportunities over recent years to live in other communities after having grown up in this area and having attended institutions of higher education here in Lubbock in the 70s and 80s. Based on that experience, I just want to note that the other communities I've lived in where single member districts appeared to provide better representative government for the citizens of those communities. And consequently, I am opposed to the addition of at-large positions, as well as I am supportive of providing a livable wage to those who would serve our community as mayor and as city council people, because I believe these two venues provide us the best opportunity for representative government for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. We're at 6:48 p.m. Anybody else like to speak?
Good evening. My name is David Haynes. I live in the 6900 block of Gary Avenue. David Haynes.
Haynes.
I want to be brief, but I want to be clear. Since we are talking about the percentage of those persons that wanted to have 2 more council persons at large, it would be nice, since this is a citizens review, that we would have our percentage. I think it's at 100%, because I have not heard anybody else that would speak for at large. The other part is, this reminds me of a McDonald's commercial. A sister and a brother were sitting at the table, and the bigger sister said, "One for you, one for me. One for you, 2 for me." And the little boy started crying because he could not control what was coming his way. I think that we're speaking with clarity to this evening, that we are paying attention, because we're not comfortable with one for you, one for me, one for you, two for me. So I think that we're speaking and we're doing it with sincerity, and we're doing it with clarity, and doing it with respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Haynes. Anybody else like to speak? I'll check Zoom one more time. No raised hands on Zoom. Anyone in the auditorium? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Josie Mitchell. I live at 1001 North Indiana. One of my concerns is that I'm not a really big politic person, but when I heard about the positions, I can't remember what they're called at this time, but I had heard on the news about the payment for the city council and the mayor, even longer term for the mayor. I heard about that a few times, but I never heard anything about the added positions. And that's something that I really don't appreciate, because if you're gonna share any of it, share all of it. And so to me, that's, it felt like we were being blindsided, not having the opportunity to know everything. And so I just ask from this point forward, whatever type of decisions, positions, or whatever are gonna be made, include East Lubbock as well. Because I've lived in Lubbock all my years. I'm 55 years old. I've been here all my life. And I've seen the improvement. I'm happy about the improvement, but we need improvement on the east side as well. It's steady growing out west and south, and it's even growing some in the north. But we have no growth in the east, other than the pizza shops. Sonic has been there, and that's, a lot of people have said the reason that you can't get businesses over there is because they won't stay up and running. Well, these different shops that are there, they've been there for a few years. So that should be an ample example of why it's beneficial for other companies to come on the east side and help build up. You're talking about renewing downtown Lubbock. How are you going to renew downtown Lubbock and not renew East Lubbock? So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell.
Good evening. My name is Carl Ife. I live at 3119 32nd Street, District 3. I want to add my voice to the voices you've heard tonight. I won't repeat all of what they had to say. My hope is what you have heard from the voices, along with the presence of these folks, is their desire to be engaged in what happens in the city of Lubbock. Their desire to see changes made that are meaningful changes for all citizens, that we long to be a community that is one, where everybody has an opportunity to serve and to grow, to learn, to open up businesses, to be supportive of each other. We're against the at-large. I am against that as well. I think having a way to voting representation is a way to get more engagement in the community. It's exciting to me to have so many folks turn out. I hope it is for you, that their love for the city is so strong that they would show up and be here to communicate a desire not just to throw rocks and not just to cast aspersions, but to say we want to be a part of the solution. Mr. Hernandez and others are here saying we want to be a part of helping us move into a bright future, as several have mentioned ahead. And so I certainly want to be a part of that as well. And so I'll really urge you to not be a part of advancing the I'm losing my language here, but at large, thank you, the at-large positions, but also the city council and the mayor work hard. and their jobs are important, and we depend on them in many, many ways. And so I think supporting a living wage where they can do that job and represent us, as you've heard many voices here tonight, we have a number of citizens in our community who would be well equipped and ready to serve. All they need is an opportunity. And so tonight I'm asking, will you give us that opportunity? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ife. We have one raised hand with no name. So with the unnamed Zoom caller, go ahead and start talking. I think you should be available.
Yes, my name is Stephanie Johnson, and I live in the 2400 block of 26th Street. I want to say first and foremost that I am in favor of paying our city councilman a livable wage and our mayor a livable wage. I also want to state, although I'm not politically astute, I oppose the at-large positions because I feel like it will dilute an already challenging position in Lubbock for the citizens of East Lubbock. I implore you to listen to the voices of the citizens here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Okay, we're getting close to wrapping this up unless someone else in the audience wants to go last.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To the group, to Mr. Arnold, to my members, to my family. My name is Billy Russell, and I am 74. I've been around for a lot of years. I watched a lot of things, and I've experienced a lot of governance from our city and otherwise. I'm here today to say that we have city councilmen, city council people that work very hard. And they're always trying to do the right thing for governing our city in governance. And I think they deserve a salary increase. I would like to have that considered. And I forgot to tell you, I work with the Dunbar Manhattan Historical Neighborhood Association. We have a lot of things go on over there. And why two at-large people? Why two? I'm opposed to it. I think we will all be opposed to two at-large. We just want to be at the table. And we would like to for you to not have two at-large people. I appreciate the time, Mr. Arnold. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Ms. Russell, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for your comments. Okay, it's now almost 7 o'clock. Does anybody dare follow Mrs. Russell? I'll check Zoom one more time. We have one more speaker on Zoom. Ms. Lala Chavez is on the Zoom call this evening.
Thank you.
Come, Lala.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. First of all, thanks each and every one of you that are on this charter, and you guys were appointed to do so. Jimmy Gomez, I appreciate the fact that you're also on there. You accepted the appointment because I know that you will do the will of the people. And what I wanted to reiterate, just a few things, not much, because I don't want to take any more of anybody's time. It's getting late and you guys have to eat supper. But what I do want to say that I too am opposed for the at-large positions. This isn't the time. I also want to say is to have courageous conversations, and we say that when we have our community task force meetings, that we need to have those conversations. However, we need to include everybody in what's happening. I've already talked to several people this week that were even unaware, and I thought for sure that they knew about it, and they were not aware of what was happening today and the changes that might be coming. So I think that we need to make an effort to put it not just in the newspaper. I think we need to put it in the Hispanic papers. We have two great papers, the El Elector. We have the Latino paper. We also have the paper in East Lubbock. Those are the two neighborhoods that are being neglected currently. So I just want to ask you guys to please, when you get out there, please make certain that it is getting out, because I'll be real honest with you. I just heard about all this when I was called into a Zoom meeting about 3 weeks ago, I believe it was. And I think it's important for each and every one of us to know and reach out. You can't drag everybody out here. I get that. But when I hear folks telling me that they were clueless about what's going on, I think it's important that we just have those courageous conversations. And I pray that we continue this conversation, that today's not the day that you guys are going to go in there and you're going to discuss about what happened today. I'm sure you will, and that's fine. But it isn't the last time that you're going to hear from the citizens of Lubbock. Thank you guys, each and every one of you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, Lala. Okay. This is the last call for comments. Check my Zoom one more time. Okay, anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I wasn't going to speak, but I've got to. I can't. I'm bubbling over. And I just want to make a comparison. My name is Capel Anderson. I live at 2914 Ute. I was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas, and I'm 73 years old. I've seen a lot of racism here in the city, and people in East Lubbock, we're tired of it. We're tired of being left out of the equation. We're tired of whenever the city needs something, they come to us to help other parts of the city. We're tired of that. I'm thankful that we have single member districts. We have a representative that represents us. And look at the neglect over there now. If we get two at large, it'd be like LISD. No schools hardly for our kids to attend. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Okay, last call. Anybody else? Let me check Zoom one more time. No raised hands. We're going to take a brief recess, probably no more than 10 minutes, and then we'll.
Mr. Chairman, you want to officially
Oh, I'm
close the
sorry.
public hearing?
I need to officially close the public hearing. So now we've done that. Now we'll take a brief recess for about 10 minutes, if that's okay with everybody, and we'll reconvene back here at 7:15. 7:15. Thank you. Okay, it's now 7:19. We went a little longer on our break. I want to thank everybody who stayed. I want to make one clarifying point before we begin. I'm going to start with Mr. Gomez on my right. Before we begin, as the Lubbock Avalanche Journal stated on Sunday, we're under the 1983, I believe, court order that mandates single-member districts. And so adding at-large positions for the city council is not in our scope as a charter review committee. So that's off the table. Now, whether or not we pay a living wage or what we do there, that is up for debate and discussion with this committee. But adding at-large districts is not in our scope as we move forward. So I wanted to make everybody aware of that, spread the word, let everybody know that. I'll also tell you that our next meeting will be April 15th at 5:30 here in these chambers. So I want to get that word out in advance as well. So with that kind of being said and kind of kicking us off, Mr. Gomez, I'll turn the dice over to you.
So just to make sure, what I got back from this meeting, which is really, really good, by the way, we're here just to listen, number one, and number two, get some feedback. There's some questions that I'm going to ask probably at the next meeting. But because there's some more information I want to know from Lubbock Compact, I want to know more from other people, so that I will be asking questions. Now, please make sure that everybody knows that the meeting's please make sure that everybody knows that the meeting will take place on April 15th. I will ask, hopefully we can put this in the East Lubbock paper. We can possibly do it for Lubbock. Who's the other Hispanic paper? You know? El Editor, Latino Lubbock, and so on and so on, so that whenever they come back, they can say, we did not know about this. I know this is kind of rushed, but guys, we want to finish by June. So anyway, thank you for being here. And it's really, really appreciative of all your efforts to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Ms. Spencer. No comment at this time. Okay. Thank you, Mr. McDougall.
I was just going to say, I heard a few comments about how quickly this public hearing occurred. And let me just tell you that was by design, that not that it happened so quickly, but that it happened at the beginning of the process. I've been involved in a lot of issues where, when it finally comes around to the public hearing, I mean, it's almost a done deal. And so I really appreciate doing this early. And for those of y'all that scrambled around, I appreciate you coming, but you've got another opportunity if there's something else that you want to address on the 15th. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I want to reiterate what Mike said. We're doing this early in the process. Our job here is to collect information from citizens, collect feedback. We'll prioritize, we'll deliberate as a body on what we want to present to the city council. We could present a lot of things to the city council and they take them and not act on it. That's what happened in 2010. We had a citizens review committee like this, a charter review committee chaired by the former mayor, Alan Henry. They made a number of recommendations that weren't taken up by the city council. So that's just, I want to kind of give you an idea. And then once the city council either accepts or rejects what we recommend, if we recommend anything, then it goes to the citizens for a vote in the fall. So that's kind of the process we'll go through as we move forward.
And just to expand upon that a little bit, what we bring, if anything comes out of this, I think will be concise. It's not going to be vague. It's not going to be open-ended. And I don't think anyone really wants a laundry list of 15 to 20 items. It's going to be something that is understandable and actionable. And if it moves forward, that's up to the council. No one's looking to deceive or hide or pull fast ones. We got some of this information right around the same time you guys were getting some of this information too. So there's no intention to deceive or to hide in this process. Know that. Ask us questions if you've got any concerns at all, please. As has been said multiple times, we are here to listen. That's why we have flipped the process that we are used to having in the city of meetings followed by public comment. We wanted to start with the public because this is your document. And that's very, very important to us. And that's all I got this evening. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Ms. Gibson.
I don't really have anything other than what everybody else has said, other than this is your charter. Make sure you go online and look through it and see if there is anything that you have suggestions for this committee for. Remember, it is your city charter. We're just going to be recommending to the council what goes on the ballot for you to vote on. So I suggest anyone that, and I mean, not just ones in this room, but anybody, go online, look through it, anything you're interested in, any part you're interested in that you want to make suggestions. It doesn't mean any of us will act on it. It doesn't mean that it'll make the ballot. And if it does make the ballot, it doesn't mean it'll get voted on. But it is your document and you need to take a look at it.
Great comments. Thank you. Mr. Lansdale.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I will kind of piggyback on some of the comments of Member Gibson. If, when you come to testify, if you could have specifics or maybe talk to specifics as it relates to a pay increase. Is that a living wage, or is that just an increase on what the current city council is paid or mayor is paid? So, some ideas, some thoughts behind that, rather than just talking towards an increase. What are your thoughts on the different kinds of increases, or what are those? And specifics related to term limits. If there's term limits that you support or don't support, what are ideas? What are comparisons that are going on? I think somebody brought up Laredo, which I think is a comparison city in size. Is there any feedback that you've seen from them paying their council a normal living wage and mayor? So any of that stuff you can bring to us. We will get information, I'm sure, around that, but from a public standpoint, if you could present that, that would be awesome for us as a committee. Thank you.
And to reiterate what Mr. Cornell said, we're going to be concise. Every recommendation that is made and adopted by the city council is one voting item on the ballot. So if we recommend 15 different things, there's 15 different items that citizens have to vote on. So what we're trying to do is, again, be concise. There'll be a lot of cleanup items. One of the things in the charter that obviously will come off the charter is the Coliseum. Obviously, it doesn't exist anymore. That's going to come out of the charter. There's a lot of cleanup items in there as it relates to changes in state law, those kind of things. Those are easy things. I don't want to take our time deliberating things that are going to come off just from cleanup items. We're going to spend the body of our time, the balance of our time, debating, talking about the things that were raised today, whether it be living wage, whether it be a modest increase or cost of living increase, those kind of things. That's what we're here to do and talk about. And the other things that may come up at the next public hearing on April 15th. So I believe, and does anybody have any other comments? Ms. Spencer, one last time for you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold, but again, I don't have any additional information to add at this time.
Thank you. Okay, hearing none. Anybody else? Any summary comments? I appreciate your attendance today. This will conclude our Charter Review Committee for March 30th, 2021.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Yeah, we need to accept the minutes, don't we?
Yes, sir.
We've got minutes as of March 24th, 2021 for the Charter Review Committee.
Move for approval.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Okay, those minutes stand. Discussion regarding any future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, the 7th, here in the chambers at 11:30. We'll go from there, and then our next public hearing is April 15th. And then probably on April 7th, we'll set some future meeting dates for the remainder of April and into May. So bring your calendars with you on April the 7th. There is no need for a closed executive session at this time. So it is 7:28 and our Charter Review Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you.